Okay, people and friends, bit of philosophy today, yeah. Today I had what we call an epiphany, a spark of insight which laid bare a great revelation about something that we have never profoundly understood consciously. And I say consciously because I consider that we know a great deal more than the everyday egoic consciousness is aware of, because the unconscious or subconscious is vast in comparison to the size of the everyday consciousness, because it's not necessary to have the vastness of knowledge from all of our lives, everything that we've ever experienced, and you know, whatever knowledge we've acquired, to be relevant and available to us in an instant. This is why our memory often has to search its archives. It has to go, wow, you know, and then has to delve back in. And that's, of course, it's a very efficient way of creating a thinking mechanism, a brain or computer, just to have only a certain amount of information available instantly, but the rest of the stuff which isn't, you know, entirely necessary to have at the forefront of our mind on an ongoing basis, to have that stored, like on a hard drive. So I had an epiphany, and it was a beautiful thing because it's put so much together of my hypothesis, and it's at the very heart and root of the book that I am writing. And I'm now on the third chapter, rewriting, doing a lot of editing and changing around of sentences, and going deeper into all of the subject matter, because you know, initially it was just absolutely overwhelming. I just thought, oh my word, where do I start on, you know, 60 years of experience and 14 years down the rabbit hole on the proverbial spiritual path? Where does one start? So I had to start at the beginning and incrementally come forward, captivating the salient parts which were exceedingly transformative in my personal development. And so I skirted over them. Now I have to go back, because my conscience won't allow me to let this opportunity go. I've got to say it now. It's all got to be written and downloaded now. I can't be lying in bed at night forever once the book has been published thinking, I should have said this, I should have said that, there's so more to say on this, and I just didn't cover it well enough, and all this sort of thing. And so, without being impatient and excited about the publication of my first book, just relax. And I said initially it's going to take me a year to write this, and so I've only been on it now 5 months. And so by the time I've worked all the way through it and become completely happy, or as happy as I could at this moment in time, happy enough to release it, you know, because I can always then write second edition and so on and so forth. So an epiphany I had, and it was amazingly powerful, and I'm very excited to convey that to you. But also then it reacquainted me with the word eureka. When people say eureka, meaning that they've found something, eureka! And so I looked into this probably about 15 years ago. Yeah, 14 years ago. It was within one of the earliest books on philosophy that I was reading. And how it came about was, they were talking about Archimedes, the great philosopher and mathematician Archimedes invented the screw. The Archimedes screw, just absolutely astounding at the time. Look what's come from that. And the screw in them times was used to bring water up from a well. So you just keep winding this thing like with a mill, and it constantly brings water out of a well. You know, if you've got this screwed mechanism with cups on the end, something like that. And so that was Archimedes, and this word eureka stems from him, or is attributed from him. And so I'm just going to read a little bit of what it says on Google. It says, the exclamation Eureka is attributed to the ancient Greek scholar Archimedes. He reportedly claimed, Eureka, Eureka, after he had stepped into a bath and noticed that the water level rose whereupon he suddenly understood that the volume of water displaced must be equal to the volume of the part of the body which he had submerged in it. He then realized that the volume of irregular objects could be measured with precision, a previously intractable problem. He is said to have been so eager to share his discovery that he leapt out of his bathtub and ran naked through the streets of Syracuse. Well, I don't think that part of it is true, but I found it. And then the bit that I was reading in relation to Archimedes was that he was commissioned by a king at the time, because somebody had sold him or given him this ornament, which was reputedly to be solid gold. Now, the king had his skepticism and his doubts about the authenticity of this, in particular of where and whom it came from. So he wondered, and he was asking the super intelligent people of that time if there's any way in which he could discern whether it was in actual fact solid gold without cutting into it and potentially decreasing the value or spoiling the aesthetics of it. And so then he heard that there was this dude called Archimedes, and Archimedes had come up with this genius thing of being able to measure an obscure shaped object, like finding the volume of it, or finding what it was actually consisted of, because once you know the volume, then you can measure a volume of pure gold against the volume of the object. And so if you've got, like, you know, some figurine which you would never in a million Sundays work out the volume of that. I think that's what calculus is about, if I'm not wrong. It's about being able to calculate the volume and space of, you know, very, very obscure and difficult shapes. And so yes, and so what Archimedes would do then, he would find out the exact weight of pure gold, and then he would measure the volume of that exact weight with the pure gold, and so we would have the volume and the weight. Then he measured that, or equated that to the volume and the weight of the object that he was commissioned to authenticate. And I think, from what I can remember, it turns out that it was in actual fact silver inside, and it was like gold on the outside. So the king had been fleeced or deceived. And so those two words, they are mega words. When we know the etymology of Eureka, it enhances our knowledge and gives us a great insight, just to know how we can determine the volume of any particular shape. You just get a measuring jug, doesn't matter how big, and you say like you've got 1,000 millilitres exactly. And then also you weigh that, so you know you've got exactly, because on a measuring container you get a bit of a lip where the water sits on the lip, so it's not the ideal situation to measure precisely, and so we can do that via weight. You measure precisely the container, then you put the water in, and then you've got the precise and exact measurement of the water, weight-wise. And so that's a wonderful thing when we know that. And so, whew, no wonder people get bored of my ramblings, because they go off on myriad tangents, and unless you're really interested in this stuff, then why would you ever want to know or sit through it? But some of you do, some of you like it, and so here we are. My epiphany came about when I was looking into the etymology of entheogen. Now, 5 months ago, when I started to write this, I knew that entheogen was pertaining to knowing God, and that's why these psychedelics are often called entheogens. And so I looked up Google Dictionary, what is the etymology and what's the root of entheogen and all this sort of thing. And entheos is Greek for God within, and so entheogen means having God within. So I thought, well, okay, that makes perfect sense when we speak about psychedelics as being entheogens, because they're a whole lot more than psychedelic. If you just speak about psychedelics, and lots of people, when they haven't took them, and they maybe are spiritual or religious, and they haven't had the experiences that we have had whilst on entheogens, they go, just taking drugs, psychedelics, and just makes everything look funny, and then you think you know God. Well, read what it says about these drugs and these psychedelics, and a much more befitting and profound descriptive word is entheogen. And then when we look at the root of entheogen, it tells us that that means the God within, knowing the God within. So any of those doubting Thomases who are all bitter and twisted and jealous about us people having a relationship with God via our taking of drugs, well, you might want to take some, and then at least you'll have a real experience of the Jesus and the God that you believe in. I don't believe in Jesus or God. I've met both of them several occasions, and so and I've seen God's kingdom. I've seen heaven and I've seen hell. I've been to both of them, and I can tell you exactly what they feel like, and you don't want to know on the evil one, that's for sure. And incomprehensibly difficult to define what heaven's like unless you felt it, and so I'm trying very hard to express all of this stuff in my book, and I have a quality that lots of people don't have, in that I can draw from lots of things, and I've got a reasonable vocabulary, and so because I'm given to going off on tangents, I can go over there and pick a little bit of something that's going to be useful. I can go over here and I can pick a little bit of something. I can go behind, I can, imagine into the future. I can do all this to draw together an amount of information which is going to be best expressed to deliver what I want. And so when I was searching entheogens, I discovered that, and I thought, perfect. Today I thought, just let me recap on that. I just want to say something about the root of that word. And so when I looked for the root of that word, I discovered then that it was the root of enthusiasm. And enthusiasm means to be with God. And because entheos, that means to be with God. And so enthusiasm is the act and the excitedness of being present with God. And I'm like, wow, that is a big deal. And then I go on to write about why it's a big deal in my book. And this book, I'm telling you people, on so many levels, it's going to be an absolute superb read, because there are many, many levels to it. And it is filled with personal, spiritual, supernatural, metaphysical, paranormal experiences, which relate to all of this stuff which we've been told for years is so. I mean, just take the Bible, for instance. You know, is anybody in their right mind just going to be completely happy that those books in the Bible were the Word of God? Or are they going to be thinking or allowing themselves to be given to thinking that these people may have been taking something when they came up with all this stuff? And what my experience with psychedelics has shown me is that they absolutely were. And I've spoken about it 1,000 times. The day I took DMT and I saw God reclining in the clouds, as clear as day, and he stayed there for like 15 minutes. The most powerful experience I've ever had. And then instantly I knew where God in the clouds from the old Bible derived from. And God is said to be moving around in a column of cloud in many of the verses in the Old Testament, and God speaking out of a cloud and that. And that's why God lives up in heaven in the clouds and all this stuff. I'd seen it. And then I'd had other DMT experiences where I've seen like Greek gods or God, you know, flying through the sky like this with all powerful muscular arms, you know, with all muscles and like, you know, with a purpose, and the hair's all flowing back and the beard's all flowing. It's like they're going at 1,000 miles an hour, only they're static in the sky. And then you got cherubs and bat-winged creatures with fangs and bat ears, and wow, and they're just there. Little cherubs with angel wings, little fat babies with angel wings, you know. And so that's just a tip of the iceberg of what I've seen on psychedelics. And so when you've had that experience, and then when you read this stuff, it's kind of like, I know where you guys are coming from. I know where all this stuff derived from. But it's kind of like, it's you know, well, it's top secret. This is the sort of stuff they used to get up to in the tabernacles, when all these plumes of white smoke could be seen seeping out of you know, the gaps here and there. They're all taking entheogens without a shadow of a doubt, people, and it's just preposterous to even consider that they weren't. Otherwise, why would everything need to be secret? And what's all this smoke about when there's a hidden concoction, secret, and all that? Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent again, aren't I? So I come back then to entheogen, which is very similar to enthusiasm, and they both have the same prefix of entheos, and that means to be with God, to have God within, to know God. And so the crux of it here, the very, very powerful thing, because in one of the chapters, maybe it's 7, 8 or 9, I speak about loneliness and boredom, and how I have never experienced either of those, and I've you know, pondered it and queried it and investigated it and wondered why I never have experienced boredom or loneliness. And I've travelled all around the world on my own the vast majority of time. And I speculated in the book it's simply because I have never been alone. I was always with someone, and that someone evidently had to have been God. And then, because of my enthusiasm for life and the world, taking me all around the world, climbing mountains and going through jungles and all this different sort of stuff, for the vast majority of the time on my own, but never alone, never feeling alone or insecure or bored or anything remotely ever in my life. Always enthusiastic about life. So enthusiasm, entheogen, basically the same thing, experiencing the God within. That's quite something, people. And it's made things even more clear than they were before. Because I know that it's not only my speculation, which I have derived myself from my own intuition and my own cognition and my own intelligence and piecing all these things together. It just so happens that the way I've pieced all these things together is actually a thing that other people have known about for at least hundreds, if not thousands of years. And so, enthusiasm. I'm always enthusiastic about life. Now, when we look at what enthusiasm means, it means we're engaged. It means we are present. We're focused in or with the job in hand. We're in the now. So, what do we know about being present? Well, when we're present, that's the best possible way to be in life, because we're not living in the past, we're not dwelling on possible future encounters, we're not, in our mind, which of course is all about the past predominantly. We're absolutely in the now, we're present, and we are free of our mind, and we are engaged with whatever it is that we're doing. And when you are enthusiastic about what you're doing, and you're not bored, and you're not doing it because you absolutely have to, and you hate every second of it, because then you're just traumatizing yourself, aren't you? I hate this bullshit, and whatever job you've got, you're cursing it because your life is slipping away. But when you are enthusiastic about it, you're loving life, and you're present, and you're in the now, you're in God consciousness. You have God within you. And so you and God have been unified. And then this then harkens back to Jewish Kabbalah. When they go into the deepest and most profoundest of meditations, their endeavour is to be in a unity with God. When Buddhists meditate and they go into the deepest of meditations, they enter nirvana. Nirvana, bliss. Nirvana, I write in my book, is synonymous with heaven, only it's from a different culture and from a different ideology. So heaven is nirvana. And when Buddhists enter into the meditation deep, when we absolutely clear our minds, when there's nothing there, we are in heaven, we are in nirvana. And nirvana and heaven aren't a state of being ecstatic and joyous. They are an absolutely empty and free state. Because that is the best state we could ever be in, because we're one with God. When we are on an emotional high, we have to know that we're always going to come down. So how can being joyous and ecstatic be the best possible emotion? Because we know that as soon as that evens out with homeostasis, we're going to be longing for that feeling and state of being to come back. We're always going to feel empty. But if the best possible version of ourselves is that we enter into the nothingness, where we don't have nothing, not even self-knowledge, we just are pure awareness. When that occurs, that is then when we've entered into the mind of God, into the kingdom of God. And I explain this in pretty graphic detail in my book. And, some of you I know have read it. And one guy said, yeah, I've read your book in about a day and a half. And I went, I said, look, if anybody reads this book, really reads this book, short of a month. They haven't read it. If anybody reads one of these chapters short of a whole 8 hours, they haven't read it. Because the depth of where I'm speaking to needs contemplating about. Just little things like when I say that Jesus spoke to me. Oh, Jesus spoke to him and la 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 la. Emergency stop. What did you just say? Jesus spoke to you? Hang on, let me have a think about that. That is an enormous claim you've just made there. Awake and brave? What do you mean Jesus spoke to you? And then you read it very, very carefully and you see what circumstances, and it's kind of like, wow, have I read anything like that before? Have I ever experienced anything like that before? I seem to have read something, and one day I think I had a little bit of this. That's really interesting. I want to know more about that. I want to know more. That's reading it. That's proper reading it. Anybody that does anything other than that hasn't read it. And so if you're the sort of person that isn't going to be contemplative when you're reading this sort of stuff, then don't even bother picking it up, because it's going to mean nothing to you. And this is one of the things and one of the reasons why I evidently was exceedingly immersed in philosophy from the very first day of my Dark Night of the Soul, reading 10, 12 hours every single day for years and years and years, and reading this stuff and having to think about what does this stuff mean. And then slowly, with all the different philosophers and the psychoanalysis and all that stuff, it finally was coming together. And when it came together, wow! All of a sudden you are in a different dimension completely. You have left planet Earth and you are in the cosmos. And this is why Nietzsche wrote about nihilism being such a potential when we delve very, very deep into philosophy. When we question everything and when we dismantle everything, ultimately we end up in the nihilism. And now you see, people have always they've beaten up on nihilism, and even Jordan Peterson destroys nihilism because he speaks about Nietzsche talking about nihilism, and it's like it's hell on earth, it's the most hideous state of mind you could ever be in. No, Jordan Peterson, this is where you're wrong. I mean, I like how he thinks on lots of things, but there's a certain place Peterson hasn't been yet. And I'll talk about Peterson in other videos, because albeit he's had 3 high doses of psilocybin mushrooms, which most people don't know, 7 grams, probably psilocybe cubensa, he knows a little bit about that, and so I respect him for that, because he went into a different state of consciousness. He's had spiritual experiences whereby he's felt the power of God or Jesus, and you know, he's done this stuff, so we're on a pretty similar trajectory, but he hasn't gone as deep as I have, and I can see that by the way he's communicating. So when he speaks about nihilism being something we should all avoid, well, that's the complete opposite to what Buddhists have been banging on about for the past 2,000, 3,000 years. Their endeavour is to enter into the nihilistic state where there is absolutely nothing. Because when you are in that nihilistic state, it's not a nihilistic state in a terrible way. It's a nihilistic state in that we have annihilated our ego, and that's the objective, to enter into the kingdom of God. And I'm going to be writing about that because that is a big deal. It's a real big, powerful deal. And I've never read anybody speaking about it. So I know some new stuff. I'm in new territory. And the way I'm looking at it, people condemning nihilism because it brings about depression. But depression is a beautiful thing. It's the portal. It's the Dark Night of the Soul. I'm presently reading St. John's of the Cross, Dark Night of the Soul. When we go into the Dark Night of the Soul, it's the deepest of repression and depression, and it's a form of nihilism where you discount everything because nothing is true, and you can't find God. You're desperate to find God, but if you stay in there long enough, seeking long enough, without topping yourself, ultimately you'll find God. And then you'll come out of the nihilism and you'll enter into the bliss of the abyss, which is just different semantics, you see, people. You're not actually leaving anywhere. It's the same darkness that goes on forever and ever and ever, infinite, with nothing in it. And that's what the universe is. That's what quantum physics state about what the quantum field is. It's just a quantum field of potential. It's got energy there, and the energy, supposedly, but you know, we can't take this too seriously, it comes in the manifestation of what they called strings in string theory. Now, what they reckon these energy forms manifest like, it's like a rubber band which is always changing its shape and coming in and out of existence. And these strings are trillions of times smaller than atoms. And so I experienced this in one of my most deepest and profoundest of meditations, and I speak about that in the book in the greatest of detail. If people just read over that and they don't want to contemplate that for a whole week, they haven't read the book. So, the abyss is what we're looking for. The nihilistic state of consciousness is what we're looking for, because that's where God is. Out experiencing the world egoically is where Satan is. And that's why in the Old Testament, in Genesis, the serpent offered the fruit from the tree of knowledge. And if you take this, then you become like gods, and you'll know the difference between right and wrong. And not only will you know the difference between right and wrong, see, this is where lots of these biblical scholars fail again. I was listening to one only a couple of nights ago with Jordan Peterson, and this biblical scholar and Christian was saying that, oh yeah, it's terribly wrong because when Adam and Eve ate from that forbidden tree, then they got the knowledge of evil. Well, they also got the knowledge of good. When Adam and Eve were ignorant in the Garden of Eden, they had no knowledge. Nothing. Zero. They were ignorant. They were little more than primates. But what happened is, when they ate the fruit, then their ego made manifest. And the ego then instantly told them that, oh, I'm naked, we're naked, look at you, look at those funny bits and all that. And then it's kind of like, God, where's God? And they hid from God because apparently they had guilt, they felt guilt and all this sort of thing. And so I've got a lot to say with these biblical scholars, and I would love to debate them because I would present to them questions that they would find it exceedingly difficult to answer in a reasonable, logistic and rational way. They just have a way of just skirting over or denying all the bits that cause them too many problems. Just like that dude did when he only wanted to emphasize that eating from the fruit of the forbidden tree was bad because you knew about evil. Why didn't he jump with joy because you also knew about good? Because you weren't no longer just automaton doing what God wanted you to. Because you never had minds of your own. Just ridiculous, preposterous and fucking heinous. But you see, they're not talking about no place. They're talking about human consciousness. And the difference between the human being and primates is that we have an ego. We have self-awareness, and we have this juggling around of should I, shouldn't I, will I, won't I, can I, can't I. Whereas primates don't have that. They just operate from their instincts, which have been evolving or created for billions of years. And so when we are in a state of enthusiasm, we're filled with joy, we're filled with purpose, we're excited. We're doing something, we're involved with something, we're living, we're not thinking about shit. We're enthusiastic about all this, enthusiastic about playing, enthusiastic about looking at the world, enthusiastic about observing my squirrel. I'm doing all these things. I'm enthusiastic about making videos. If I wasn't enthusiastic, then I'd be bored. And I'd be What happens? Where did I go? I went to hell, didn't I? It's simple, people, when we look at it. I mean, Mr. Nobody says to me the other day when I'm speaking, he said, well, it's simple for you because, you know, of who and what you are and where you've been. But it isn't simple for the vast majority of people. And when I'm speaking to you guys, probably this is just double Dutch. It's Chinese. And you just got to go, whoa, whoa, whoa. I have no clue what you're on about. Some people may think they've got a little bit of an insight into what I'm saying. But just pause and just think really. You know, what am I saying? And this is why I'm always like, come and talk, come and talk, come and talk. Is anybody coming to talk? Because I want people to ask me, what do you mean by this? Because I need this myself. You know, you see, this is the beauty of intellectuals. Like Jordan Peterson, for instance, he has been a public speaker for 30 years of his life. And when people are public speakers, they have to be very mindful of what they are saying cannot be torn to pieces, otherwise they just make fools of themselves. So therefore, that's why he's exceedingly well read, and whatever he speaks about has a root in whatever he's read. So if anybody has anything to say about, oh, that what you have just said, he can refer them or deflect it back to Nietzsche or back to Jung or back to Schopenhauer, all this sort of thing, you see. And when he has a great knowledge bank, then he can speak confidently about what he considers he knows. And if he's a real thinking person, like he is, he will also think for himself about what do these things mean, and do I really have an adherence to them or not. A little bit here I do, a little bit there I don't. Why don't I there? Probably because my knowledge and experience isn't to the same extent of this writer. If I gained more knowledge about what this person's saying, would I think the same? Would I feel the same? Maybe. But we're all different, maybe not. So it gets really, really complex. But getting back now again, you see, at least what I do is when I'm speaking, I always come back to the focal point. Invariably, I will summarise and I'll conclude, if it's possible to conclude. And so what I'm saying in this video, primarily, is that I discovered the root of enthusiasm. I became aware of it. Of course, you know, looking at it unconsciously, I would have made that connection, but consciously it wasn't apparent to me. And so now I looked at it overtly, egoically conscious. Then I recalled information about other stuff that I know, and I'm comparing them together, and I'm going, look what's happened here. Now this word enthusiasm, which is almost exactly the same as then theogen, which means to have a relationship with God. That's what you've been all your life, Aaron. You've been super enthusiastic. You love life, and even the bad times are good because you just fucking love that shit. And you learn so much from it, and you become a much better person, more intellectually endowed, and you can speak from a solid foundation because you've actually experienced the knowledge that you've acquired, rather than just book knowledge, which isn't knowledge. So that was powerful. And it's told me, it's reiterated, that I absolutely am on the right track. And all that I'm saying absolutely has veracity, authenticity, and accuracy, value, just because what I'm speaking about mostly is my subjective experience, which the vast majority of people haven't had, because these are very special circumstances. But because then, like Peterson, I can relate all of what I have experienced personally on psychedelics or in dreams or with just having spiritual experiences, with being in, seeing Jesus in my mural and having him speak to me, you know, and all this, I can go, hang on, sit down. You got a couple of hours, sit the fuck down, right? And you'll be eating your hat at the end of this conversation if you've got an ounce of intelligence between your fucking ears. And then I can go back and I can instantiate every single thing that I am saying, every single thing that I've come to know. I can go back, I can follow the Ansel and Gretel lineage of where all this stuff comes from. I don't pick anything out of my asshole. And so whenever I'm speaking, and often people who think they are intellectual think they are well read and experienced, and invariably these people are half my age because they're still young enough to not be wise enough, but they're young enough to think that they are wise. And the young ones, full of themselves, want to challenge wisdom, and it just looks ridiculous. Because from my perspective, I can see the great lacking. But from their perspective, they can't see the additional information and experience I've got. Because I'm in an outer extremity of a concentric circle. And I'm always using this analogy, which as far as I'm concerned, I coined it, this concentric circles of consciousness. The further you go out, like when you throw a pebble in a pond and you got ripple, 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 ripple. Well, every single one of these ripples are states of consciousness. And we invariably, most of us, will start within the first, second or third. If you are old souls, you probably don't ever start in the first circle of being absolutely blank and having no innate knowledge. And so, but as we learn, as we become more wiser, we then go out into further extremities of consciousness, and we leave the conscious realm behind us when we enter into another one. And we also leave the cognizing ability of the people that we were with when we were in that same circle. If they haven't made the transition and come outside of that circle, i.e. by having a near-death experience, a supernatural experience, a deeply traumatic experience, psychedelic experience, paranormal experience, you know, any of these things, which just give the system, the ego, a massive meltdown, shakedown. It just shakes you, knocks you into an outer parameter of consciousness. And then you find yourself there, and this is what the whole waking up thing's about. You find yourself in an instant in another state of consciousness, and you're looking all around, and you don't know that in this state of consciousness there are beings that think just like you, because that's why they're there. But you don't have any relationship with these people that you've just found yourself amongst. You have a relationship, or used to have a relationship, with the people that were in the other circle. And now you try to communicate with them, telling them about this higher state of consciousness, how you can see this and you can see that. Can't you see this? Do you know this? What about that? And they're like, and it's like, no, you don't get it. But they're dead. And this again then is beautiful. It's the allegory of Plato's cave. And I wrote extensively about that in the second chapter, where I'm saying that the vast majority of people are in Plato's cave. And if you don't know what that means, and if you want to learn and want to be more spiritual and philosophical, you have to know that allegory. Plato's cave, you know, it's not very long. You know, you read it probably in an hour, but the magnitude of what is being said there takes some assimilating. But what it means is effectively people They are like pigs in shit in their own dullness and darkness and suffering. And if someone would shake them and say that there's, you know, there's an opening to this cave up there, you know, and outside there, you know, the sunshine and there's all this stuff going on, they're like, fuck off, get away from me. And then they want to stone you or do something, because to take them out of the devil that they know, the suffering that they've been used to, is too terrifying. Even though it's terrifying where they are, they become accustomed to that terror and pain and suffering. And to go out, to wake up, is you start again. And like I said, that I went into the dark night of the soul for 7 years solid. And then I only started to come out of it, you know, for another 3 years, so 10 years, 14 years after, I'm still a recluse, because I'm in an outer extremity of consciousness where there is very few people. The further you go out, the less and less people are there. And now what I have to do to find these people is search all over the world. On YouTube, looking for the intellectuals, looking for people speaking about similar things like me. But, you know, like Jordan Peterson, you know, as an intellectual, as most people would have him down for being, he's still missing the bigger picture. Because he's contained, and that's what all of his books are about. They're about the meaning of life, being a human being, come from the egoic standpoint, sprinkled with a little bit of, you know, influence from his psychedelic experiences, talking about God and, you know, the supernatural experiences he's had. But primarily, you see, if he's going to sell books, if he's going to be engaging with these people at 100 grand a sitting, then he can't be speaking about that stuff out there. He can't be speaking about his psychedelic experiences, and that's why he doesn't ever go there. You know, I've only ever heard him mention that once in one conversation. And so we can see what's going on. He, in actual fact, is capitalising on his gift of articulation and his hard work through his reading and all that sort of stuff over these years. But he's not being true to himself. If he was being true to himself, then he would be in nihilism. He would be in the abyss. He would be in the bliss of Buddhist nothingness. That's where he would be. But how much money is to be earned there? Nothing. What benefit does he have about speaking about that? No benefit, because his market is going to be minuscule compared to the egoic market that he's dwelling within and has become a fucking billionaire, you know, almost overnight. That's where Peterson is. That's where his flaws pertain to. And if he ever really wants to seek out truth, he's going to have to step outside of that. And I wonder if anybody wants to copy and paste this and send it to him, or post it on any of his channels or anything like that, and say, you should speak to this guy, because I think a conversation between you and him would be pretty interesting and fascinating. Yeah, one day when I've got my book published, and I'm going to try and get it to him, hopefully I'll be able to gain audience with him. You know, if he ever considers that, you know, I am worthy, and as I won't be paying him 50 or 100 grand, then I don't know how he might feel about that. Anyway, I've said a lot of stuff, and so I put the ball in your court now, just to think. If this stuff has meant anything to you, do you want to engage with me about any of this subject matter? Are there any questions you want to ask me for clarity? Did any of this mean anything to you? Or was it just gibberish gobbledygook? You know. I don't have to say anything, do I? You just see it in my face. It's kind of like I'm out there in an outer extremity of a concentric circle that the vast majority of you guys are nowhere near. And it's not a derogatory thing. I'm not, you know, claiming that, you know, I'm more genius than you. I've just had a lot more experience than you. And I have been gifted in a certain philosophical, spiritual, psychological way that I can bring all these things together. And it's just like, you know, people like, let's say, Lennon and McCartney. Lennon had a certain something, McCartney had a certain something. On their own, they would have been pretty well just, mediocre within the realms of all other songwriters and musicians. But the fact that they came together by this chance created genius, because between the two of them, they had the ingredient for incredible songs. And so, because of my psychological stuff, my philosophical stuff, my spiritual stuff, my phenomenological stuff, and all this, I bring this together, and I think there's a certain level of genius in that. And, one day I'm hoping that it's going to be recognised, realised, and spoken about and discussed, because I am seriously desirous to have people question me on what I think I know, what I'm espousing, because if people question me, it forces me, like Jordan Peterson for all those years being a lecturer, people have said to him, what about this? You say this and you say that. Well, he had to have a background for it, and there's going to be a day, and I'm working my way towards it, where I will be on stage, or I will be being interviewed by serious intellectuals. And so I need to have all these questions covered. I need to have explanations, well formatted explanations. When we listen to Peterson or anybody that's wrote a book, people who haven't read the book don't know what's going on, but people who have read the book, you will see that all these people do when they are posed with a certain question is they just like archive. They go back to their archive, they turn to find this page, and then they almost parrot fashion those few paragraphs which pertain to that question. Why? Because it's the most reliable, it's the most thought about, it's more concise, because they've thought about it long enough to write it down and be happy with it and leave it. So why would you ever want to keep reinventing the wheel? You wouldn't. So therefore they just go back into their archives like librarians. If you go in and you say, I want to talk about Nietzsche, whoosh, they go and get, the collection of Nietzsche out, and then they'll just present them to you. And so, I don't find that part of it inspiring. I find the part inspiring whereby I am going to have to think about these things. And when people, ask me questions, I'm going to be... Ooh, right, okay, so that one I haven't really formatted, and so you've helped me there, because I've now got to format it. And sometimes, listening to Peterson's question and answers, he will be posed something, and he will say that. He'll go, I'll have to get back to you on that, because off the cuff, I'm not confident, and I don't want to deliver something which I haven't thought about in the greatest and finest of details, because that's how his mind works. And so I'm pretty well the same. I don't want to be spouting off something I've not thought about, but I do want to think about these things. And in an arena where it's not that important, I'm not sitting before, a potential million viewers, 500 people, I would like that opportunity. So if any of you want to do that, then just hit me up. And if you've got to ask for my email by now, shame on you. And if you do have to ask, then it's in the about section. Don't be crying to me, oh, what's your email? Come on, people. If you can't even look in the about section to think, oh, is his email going to be there? Then you'd never fucking Google a single word, would you? And your vocabulary wouldn't increase. You'd stay in this stagnant level, living like a water boatman. These little creatures, beetle type things, that walk along top of water. They don't swim and they don't fly. They stay on that two-dimensional flat world all their lives. Don't live in flat world, people. Delve into other states of consciousness and be brave enough to take a little bit of flight into the ones above you. Wow, what a great rant, what a great fucking video. I'll say it myself, because guaranteed barely a single one of you will. Well done, Aaron, you did a fucking fine job there. You've given something to this cosmos. You have been a portal for God to work through you and enable other people to slowly work themselves towards being an enlightened being. Yeah, well, I suppose, I've said it before, my my wage, my payment. I already have it. I've been paid forever, all my life I've been paid. And so for me to ask for more, then that's just being greedy, because I've already got everything I could ever wish for. And I'm filled with enthusiasm. I'm filled with the relationship with the Creator. Can you imagine? And so some people, religious people, Christians who have had a go at, because they don't know where it's at and they can't see what's going on here, or maybe they can see a little bit and they're so livid with envy, bitterness and jealousy because I don't proclaim that I'm a Christian, because I'm not a Christian. I'm a philosopher, I'm a psychoanalyst, I'm a spiritualist, I'm a thinker. I'm a shard of God consciousness. I go straight to source. I don't go to no middleman. Jesus was the middleman. I go straight to source. Chew on that one.